I'm Vinnie Politan. The subject of my investigation is the drama playing out in real time in Tucson. The abduction of Nancy Guthrie, a case that has everyone wondering who is the man behind the mask and why did he take Nancy? Here's the story. 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie vanished from her Catalina Foothills home after she never made it to church and relatives discovered something was terribly wrong inside her home. Authorities quickly shifted from a missing person search to a criminal investigation, saying the evidence points to an abduction, not a voluntary disappearance. Surveillance video shows a masked individual outside her home in the dark of night, armed. Blood confirmed to be Nancy's was found on the property. Ransom letters surfaced. The FBI joined local investigators. Now the case has drawn national attention, fueled by Nancy's connection to her daughter, Today Show anchor Savannah Guthrie. Who is the person captured on camera? Are the ransom demands credible? And as thousands of tips flood in, what critical piece of evidence could finally lead authorities to Nancy? Now, we haven't had a story of this magnitude of mystery and intrigue and investigative manpower, seemingly, since the 4 students in the University of Idaho were murdered. And we know what led to the arrest there. There was, yes, some surveillance video, some cell phone pinging, but it was all about the DNA. Let's bring in Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas. Cody, can you lay out all the DNA evidence that we know about in this case?
Yeah, Vinny, you know, we're starting to get a better idea of what the authorities are working with here as this investigation goes on. And of course, we begin with that blood evidence that was found just outside of Nancy Guthrie's front door. Now, important to note, police say no blood was found anywhere else inside the home or outside the home, outside of that front porch spot that we're seeing on the screen right there now. And the thing about this blood spot, Vinny, we also know that the blood found matches Nancy Guthrie's DNA. Now, we have also seen reports from the sheriff regarding other DNA being found inside Nancy's house as well that he says is still being processed and analyzed. But what we also have is this video of a Range Rover that was seized during a recent federal operation where, Vinny, a man was detained and questioned in connection to the investigation, but that man was later released. Now, the Range Rover was still searched and towed, and we're still waiting to see what, if any, DNA samples are retrieved from it. Then we have this image obtained by the New York Post of the glove that was found almost 2 miles away from Nancy's house. That glove that resembled the gloves worn by a potential suspect seen on Nancy's doorbell camera. Take a listen to the sheriff speaking about this glove.
That glove was found 2 miles away. Somebody called it in as a tip. We would be crazy not to say, oh yeah, go ahead, we don't need it. No, we're gonna go out and get it. In fact, since then, we've been widening our search patterns, which is pretty typical in these cases. And in that search, we've gone out almost, what, 5-10 miles, and we've found lots of gloves. But we have prioritized that. I don't want people to sit there and say, oh, there's a glove, they got too many. No, call us. Right. Let us do. Yeah. So that glove was found. The FBI said, well, we can send it to Quantico. I said, well, we could, but here's the thing. All of our DNA evidence is already at our lab. Mm-hmm. They've come back with reports. Those reports have been shared with you. In fact, your reports from your lab on the video, it was shared with us. All of that went out. Why would you add a second lab to this? Because now that lab, if they get a marker, say they get a profile, what are they going to do? Call our lab to send stuff over? You've added a step there that's not needed. We've submitted all our evidence, and we have gotten back results with DNA. That's all I can speak to.
Yeah, and you're then going to run, you know,
absolutely
off of that.
Absolutely.
Off of
that. If we get a suspect, we hope to get a swab and validate it with the DNA.
So, Vinny, we heard the sheriff there talking about sending the glove off for DNA testing, and he put this recent statement out regarding the results of that DNA testing. He says DNA evidence from gloves found approximately 2 miles from the house was submitted to a lab in Florida and to CODIS. There were no DNA hits in CODIS. At this point, there have been no confirmed CODIS matches in this investigation. there is additional DNA evidence that was found at the residence, and that is also being analyzed. And Vinnie, important to note, it has been confirmed that the DNA on the glove did not match the other DNA found inside the residence. And another note, Vinnie, investigators are still currently looking into additional investigative genetic genealogical options for DNA evidence to find matches, kind of like we saw in the Brian Kohberger case that you mentioned, where they've found a hit on something like 23andMe.
Exactly, exactly. Thanks so much, Cody. So it would have been so significant if that glove, even if you didn't get a hit in CODIS, had matched DNA from the house. Now you can take that glove and put it in the house, and then you find out who's connected to the glove. You can put that person in the house. But that's not happening. That's not where we are in all of this. And that brings us to the next question, or the first question tonight in our investigation, which is what happens next with the DNA evidence from the glove. Joining me, attorney, professor, and director of the Investigative Genetic Genealogy Center at Ramapo College, where they are doing absolutely amazing work. David Gurney is with us, and the chair of the Forensic Science Department at the University of New Haven, former major crime squad detective and a crime scene reconstructionist, Peter Valentin is with us as well. Two great guests. I'm glad you're both here. David, let me begin with you. If looks like they're going down that route of genetic genealogy, explain the process, the challenges, and the timing of all of it.
So they're going to have to develop a different kind of genetic profile from this evidence. It sounds like the CODIS attempt failed, and that's using traditional DNA technology that we're familiar with from the O.J. Simpson case, for example. It's pretty old technology. The new kind of technology that's available today allows us to develop a much more sophisticated DNA profile that looks at the entire human genome. And that profile can be uploaded to a couple of consumer genetic genealogy databases. So these are databases that ordinary members of the public have uploaded their DNA to for the purposes of finding out more about their families or discovering unknown things about their families. And those people, about 3 million of them, ordinary members of the public, have opted into law enforcement searching. So that means if their relatives, if any of them are relatives to this individual, if they're first cousins, second cousins, third cousins, all the way out to potentially eighth cousins, we can use their information to help to reverse engineer where this individual fits into the family tree. So we're going to build up, whoever works on this case is going to be building up the matches to this individual, the relatives of this person, to find out common ancestors and eventually figure out where he fits in that tree. So it's a really remarkable process. It's only been around since about 2018, and it means that we can now start to solve these cases even when there are no hits in CODIS.
Unbelievable. All right, Peter, what are your thoughts about the glove, the significance, and also the fact that it didn't match any of the DNA that was gathered from inside the home?
Well, thank you for having me, first off. And I think the value of forensic investigative genetic genealogy really can't be overstated in a case like this. It really gives us access to so much more information than we previously had. The challenge is we don't know what's probative DNA at this point. The fact that we don't have a CODIS hit doesn't really tell us much about the probative value of the glove. I think we can infer that if it's 2 miles away, it could have probative value, and it might not. There's a reason why they sent this to their private DNA lab to be tested. There's a reason why it was CODIS uploadable. And so the fact that it didn't return a hit doesn't really reflect on whether or not it has investigative value. Now, the fact that it didn't also return a case connection hit, right? It didn't also return back to another DNA profile that has already been determined within this case also doesn't help us out here. So what we're missing here is we're missing a piece of evidence that we know was handled by a perpetrator so that we can say, this is the unknown profile that we now need to connect everything else to. That's the unknown profile that we can potentially then use to then explore further through investigative genetic genealogy. The challenge is if we only have that one small sample, we might not have the opportunity to rerun it using the different DNA process needed for a FIG in order to get that, to extract that additional information. So what we're searching for here is the DNA profile that we know belongs to the offender. And the further and further we go out from that scene itself, the less likely it is that we're going to find something that belongs to the offender. And I think in most circumstances, 2 miles away, it's really hard to imagine that that has probative value. But given its remote location, and I would say given, the stark contrast between this dark, black nitrile glove and the desert environment, it must have seemed unusual for it to be there. And my concern would be, and I've seen this reported earlier, that Pima County Sheriff's Office feels confident that they've collected known DNA samples from all the workers who have been on the property over some period of time. And I'm really unsure of whether or not that's possible for them to know with certainty that every unknown profile is going to come back to a worker. So I don't know if they can close the loop on that for sure.
Yeah. David, give us some idea of the timing of running this DNA from this glove in this fashion. And then you're a lawyer too. I guess at some point, if you do connect it, it would lead to probable cause and hopefully to get a more definitive sample like they did in the case involving the 4 students from Idaho.
Yeah, so ordinarily in a case of IGG, we're oftentimes working with cold cases. So these are cases that are years, sometimes decades old. With those cases, oftentimes it can take 3 to 6 months to develop a genetic profile. But I think with a case like this, where the urgency is extremely high, where you have a known offender who's out there and hopefully still a living victim who's out there, they're going to push this to the front of their list. They're going to make sure that this gets run as quickly as possible. So I would imagine that they'll develop a DNA profile from this, if they're able to, very quickly. From there, the timeline changes a lot depending on what we see in the genetic match list. So if they develop that profile and it gets uploaded to the 2 DNA databases, which are Family Tree DNA and GEDmatch Pro, by the way, depending on what investigators see on those databases, it's going to give them an idea of how difficult and how long it might take to solve this case. Some cases can be solved in a couple of hours. We've had cases, several, that were solved in 2 to 4 hours because there were very close matches in the database, half siblings or first cousins. If, on the other hand, there are more distant matches, and say the individual is from a underrepresented population, if he's Latin American, if he's African American, if he's Asian American, that can significantly increase the difficulty of a case like this. But ultimately, it comes down largely to the luck of the draw. Who has taken a DNA test and how closely related are they to this individual? And that's why we depend on the public for our work. Any individual who takes a DNA test can help move a case like this forward. You might have no idea that you're related to somebody who could do something like this. But by taking a DNA test and uploading to the database, you might actually help solve this case more quickly.
Absolutely. Peter, do you think this is ultimately going to be a DNA case, or do you think the break may come from a witness who knows something or saw something or maybe, was involved and gets in some sort of other trouble?
So this is one of those interesting cases. My investigative background really exposed me to the fact that, forensic evidence doesn't really lead the way. It very often confirms things we determine investigatively. It kind of confirms what we already suspected through, the old-fashioned investigative techniques from knocking on doors and conducting interviews. And this is one of those rare cases where we're waiting with bated breath for every forensic test result because we're leading the process, right? Each test result potentially takes us in a new investigative direction. And that's unusual, despite the fact that, forensic shows are all the rage and forensic channels are, things that people watch. So is this a DNA case? Yes, to the extent that it gives us a name. Because once we have a name, now we can begin to go through the gigabytes and perhaps terabytes of data that exist about cell phone tower hits, about motor vehicle traffic in the region, about toll tags, about you could just imagine all the data that exists, and that's now been geofenced in that vicinity to get a sense of who's been there and for how long. and all they need to know is a name.
And then you can kind of do the matching there. I got you. We got a lot more to get to this hour. So Peter Valens is going to stick around. David Gurney, thank you so much. Extremely informative and great work again over at Ramapo. Say hi to all the folks there. We love them. All right, coming up next. Was the SWAT raid unsuccessful?
We love you, Mom.
Love you, Mom.
We love you, Mom. Stay strong.
We love you.
In 2021, Dee Warner vanished without a trace.
Dale Warner. He's accused of murdering his wife, Dee. Rumors of a troubled marriage spread throughout this small community.
She had contemplated divorce several times.
Now, after years of searching for Dee Warner,
her remains are found on the couple's property.
Sealed inside a welded shut storage tank.
We're still going to fight to the end to see that she gets her justice.
The hidden murder of Dee Warner. Live coverage weekday mornings on Court TV.
Every reference, Nancy, a white female, 84 years of age, 5'2" medium build, eyebrow blue, rings after 2,200 hours.
She is 84 years old. Her health, her heart is fragile. She lives in constant pain.
Nobody's eliminated, but we just really don't have enough to say, this is our suspect, this is our guy.
Everyone is looking for you, Mommy, everywhere.
This past weekend was a huge, it was a huge deal in this investigation, and many people thought this was it, right? You had a SWAT raid of a home. SWAT goes in, clears the home, and then 15 investigative vehicles go into the house while simultaneously a Range Rover is stopped at a Culver's parking lot. The driver is detained, not arrested, but detained, but the Range Rover is seized. And it seemed like, okay, they had this lead that led to detainment, that led to a raid, that led to a seizure. Let's bring back in Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas. What is the sheriff saying now about this big SWAT raid?
Well, yeah, it was the most movement that we've seen in this investigation in days, with clearly some pretty heavy-duty resources put into play, Vinny. But News Nation's Brian Inton was at the scene of the SWAT raid on Friday night. He shared what he saw on his YouTube channel. Take a listen.
It was two big, Bearcat SWAT trucks. I would say maybe 24 deputies. Everyone was just a lot of armor. I mean, it was very, very serious. We got in there before they put the police perimeter up, and we could tell that they didn't have to use force. The man and the woman surrendered outside of the house, and there was no issue there from what I could tell. And from what my sources are telling me. And at the same exact time, they were able to get a man from the traffic stop who is also connected to the same situation.
And Vinny, the sheriff also put out a statement regarding evidence that is being processed from those raids. He says, quote, investigators are still processing evidence from the 2 search warrants executed last week. The individuals who were questioned have been released and no arrests have been made. As this investigation continues, you can expect to see similar activity. So Vinny, similar activity, but looks like as far as right now, it was a whole lot of movement to essentially be back at square one.
Wow. All right. Thanks, Cody. That brings us to the next question in our investigation. And it's about that SWAT raid. Was the SWAT raid unsuccessful? Joining me, private investigator, search and rescue pilot, and ground searcher Steve Fisher. And still with me, former detective Peter Valentin. Steve, what are your thoughts here? Was this an unsuccessful raid and seizure, or are we still hopeful that something will come of it?
No, I don't think it was unsuccessful. I mean, we don't know exactly what that probable cause was to get them there. You know, SWAT's brought in to secure that scene and make sure it's safe for the detectives and those executing the search warrant to do their thing. And, you know, just because there was this raid doesn't mean they were necessarily going after the person. They could be going after people or things connected to that person or evidence that would lead them to the correct person. So we don't know what they got out of there. It was, and it was also a federal. This last one was a federal search warrant, which has a higher standard. So something I think got them there, and I think they probably gained some intelligence from it that's helpful.
Peter Politan, what are your thoughts about the results at this point? Should we expect more? They did seize the Range Rover.
Yeah, so I'd agree with Steve on this, that, you know, a search warrant requires probable cause. And so the idea that they had enough facts and circumstances to believe that evidence of this kidnapping existed both in that home and with that Range Rover tells me that there's information that we're not privy to. And so, of course, you know, hearkening back to our first segment, these search warrants being executed gives us access to more DNA profiles that we can compare to unknown samples that are being recovered at the scene and in the surrounding area. But in addition to that, being able to search the scene in the vehicle gives us the ability to document locations and to provide, you know, additional situational cues and information that, you know, the significance of which we might not know yet. I would say, you know, 2 weeks ago, had we seen, you know, the manufacturer's tag of an Ozark Trail backpack, none of us would have appreciated its significance until we saw the video. So getting the ability to document thoroughly these locations can give us investigative leads that we don't even realize are investigative leads yet.
Yeah, Steve, where do you think they are right now? Do you think they're inching closer, or do you think they're just following different paths to see if something gives?
I think they're getting there. I really do. You know, I think I know the sheriff has given some new interviews, but I mean they're very quiet, and I think that that DNA profile. Yeah, I'm not too concerned about that glove, but it's that DNA profile from inside the house, that unknown profile. That if they're working up the genealogy on that, I think that that's probably where their laser focus is right now. And you know, once they get that back, then I think you're going to see something you didn't see in the last raid, and that's going to be like the HRT, you know, hostage response team for the FBI, you know, involved in making a move. And I think that's coming sooner than later. I really do.
Yeah, I think everyone is hoping that is going to happen, and hoping that there's a chance to find her. Peter Politan, we have about 40 seconds left here. The people who were detained and then released, obviously there's a lot of social media chatter about them. They've not been charged with anything related to this. How much of an investigation do you think is going into their backgrounds?
Well, what we don't know quite yet is, were they the search warrant targets themselves and they just happened to be at the location when the search warrant was executed, or is the search warrant for the location? Either way, we're going to get known DNA samples from them, whether it's surreptitiously connected off of items they touched, or whether or not they were the subjects of the search warrants and we were there to get known, you know, latent, you know, lone fingerprints and DNA samples. So I would expect the scrutiny to continue for some time until we know what their connection is and why the information brought us to that location.
All right, Peter Politan, great to have you on the show. I hope you'll come back. Steve Fisher's going to stick around. Still to come. Is it possible they have 40 people of interest? I'm Vinnie Politan. We continue our investigation into the abduction of Nancy Guthrie. With every new development, there is renewed hope that she will be found and renewed prayers that she will be alive. Here's the story. An ordinary Sunday morning turned into a nightmare when Nancy Guthrie never showed up for church. The 84-year-old Tucson resident and mother of Today Show anchor Savannah Guthrie had been last seen around 9:45 p.m. Saturday night at her home in the Catalina foothills. When family members checked on her hours later and found the house empty, they called law enforcement. What began as a welfare check quickly escalated. Detectives designated the home a crime scene, stating the physical evidence indicates Nancy did not leave voluntarily. Blood identified as hers was located outside the home. Investigators have also revealed that digital health monitoring tied to her pacemaker was disabled during the overnight hours that she vanished. The FBI is now assisting in the case and has recovered images of a potential suspect. Armed with those developments, authorities say the search effort has expanded and the urgency to find Nancy has only grown. Okay, there's been lots of criticism thrown at this investigation, but the one thing you can't criticize, like they're investigating. Like it's not like they're sleeping on it, it's not sitting on the side. This isn't Delphi, where all the information they needed they got on day 2 and then they forgot, they didn't look at it for 10 years. Like, no, that's not the situation. That's not what is happening here. They are investigating, they are following every lead. They're getting like 40,000 tips. It's really like all in. The FBI is in on it as well. Let's bring back in Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas. Cody, what do we know about any leads that investigators have been following here?
Well, we know investigators have started combing through local businesses in the community, following a couple of those leads, Vinny, starting with that backpack that we saw on that potential suspect in that doorbell cam video that we've all seen by now. You see images of this backpack here. We know they've identified this backpack as an Ozark Trail brand backpack as they continue their investigation. And Vinny, one thing to note about Ozark Trail book bags is that they are only sold exclusively at Walmarts. And Vinny, also on that same topic, the Pima County Sheriff's Department also released a statement talking about the clothing the suspect was wearing in that video. They say PCSD can confirm that the clothing seen in the video may have been purchased from Walmart, but is not exclusively available at Walmart. This remains a possibility only. The investigation is ongoing and information may change as new details develop. But again, that backpack, Vinny, sold exclusively at Walmart stores. So again, we see the video of that suspect here that we've all seen by now, this creepy video of this suspect lurking around Nancy Guthrie's front porch, masked, has the gloves on, the backpack on, a gun dangling from their waistband. But Vinny, we've gotten reports about police going around and questioning local gun shops. Now, this report is according to News Nation. They say News Nation's Brian Inton reports that FBI agents have visited several gun stores in the Tucson area with a list of 40 names and photographs, asking employees whether any of the individuals have been in the stores or purchased weapons. Now, Vinny, the sheriff says investigators are also going around to these businesses, going around to gun stores, but they're showing that video we just saw to the store owners released by the FBI to determine if there's any familiarity that the gun owners may have with the person in that video. Take a listen to this.
They're just asking. They're taking around, somebody said, oh, they've got 40 pictures. No, what they've done is just like everybody. The Ring camera video, they'll go to a gun shop and say, does this guy look familiar?
So, Vinny, whether it's photos, whether it's videos, they are investigating, they are going around, they're showing something to these gun shop owners.
Thanks, Cody. And I've seen one of the gun shop owners been interviewed out there, and he mentioned seeing photographs, which brings us to the next question in our investigation. Is it possible they have 40 people of interest? That they have 40 of them? 40 photos and a list of 40 names? Still with me, search and rescue expert Steve Fisher. Joining me, private investigator Robin Martinelli. Great to have you back, Robin. Steve, what do you think of is going on here? Do you think, because that's what at least one gun shop owner is saying when he's being interviewed, that he's being shown photographs. Is it possible that they're going around the FBI with a list of 40 names and 40 photographs?
Yeah, I think they could be. I don't think they're true persons of interest in the true definition of the word. But, you know, what it could be is I think they worked with Walmart immediately and probably compiled a list, including photos from checkout from anybody that bought these backpacks in that region, you know, from Walmart in a certain time frame, and then cut out the females and just it could be a list of people, you know, like that, and they're just going around to see if these gun shop owners happen to recognize that person. However, I think the chances of this person buying the gun legally is probably somewhat remote unless they've owned it a very long time. But I, you know, I do applaud that they're doing a lot. They are getting out there and they're really trying to turn something up. So I applaud them for that.
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, this is not the Delphi case. Robin, what are your thoughts here about the visiting the gun shop owners, but also following up on the Walmart backpack lead?
Well, absolutely. You could have 40 victims in a case. No, excuse me, 40 victims. You have 40 suspects. Here's the issue. You need to start with the family first, and obviously there's been investigation there, but you need to go widespread. I don't know if you remember the Elizabeth Smart case and the Idaho murders. At first, we didn't have a whole lot until they did digital imprints and the tower traffic, and looking at maybe the trajectory of how tall this individual is based on his photograph. Coming up, how big is his hands? How big is his head? You know, what he might weigh. And then you have to look at all the ring cameras. In the Elizabeth Smart case, as you remember, nobody knew the voice until one of the victims, the sister, said, I think I hear that voice, which we would need to look at all her extracurricular activities, anybody that she had in contact with at all, like a landscaper or a retail person, the Uber driver. I mean, there's a big, big span of people that they're looking at. But also remember the tower traffic. So any phone calls going into the tower forensically and digitally for a digital imprint, going in the tower traffic, coming out, that takes hours and hours and days to go through, just through the Cellubrite and through the digital imprints on the tower traffic and the phones in the area, plus the ring cameras, plus anybody else that may have a camera that's going on a loop, and then the Walmart. Now, Walmart's has pretty good cameras, really good cameras.
Let me ask you, Steve, about the individual who is shown in that mask, right? And you take a look at the image, and when you zoom in, you can see eyebrows, you see eyes. Some people I believe you see some facial hair. Do you think someone who knows that person would recognize them? Because this is not under the radar. This is the story that, like, everybody knows about to some degree. And my guess is when the images came out of curiosity, everyone's gonna look at it. Then you get closer to Tucson, like that amplifies exponentially, I believe, among the public. Yeah, there's some people that don't pay attention to anything. But do you believe if someone knows the person and saw the images in the mask that they would recognize the man on the porch?
100%. That's why every day I've been saying, urging, if they have more video to show, I think they need to put it out there, because somebody's going to see it from the right angle and recognize this person. Like you said, there's some distinctive features, you know, the facial hair. There's one shot where the person's teeth are really exposed. And I almost wonder, like other guests was saying, if there's any audio to this, because it's almost like they're saying something, because their mouth or their lips are receded and showing their teeth. And also the person to me looks like they're walking with the left shoulder really slumped all the time, like they have an injury. So I do think if they put more video out there, somebody's going to recognize this person.
And Robin, what are your thoughts if the person who recognizes it is a relative, girlfriend, or spouse? Do we have to wait for the breakup for them to turn them in?
I don't know if we'd have to wait for the breakup, but everybody has a digital imprint. So if you're suspecting somebody, even the bat phones have digital imprints, even from Walmart, because if you can't recognize it from the phone they're using there, you can do the tower traffic. And again, this takes hours and hours and days. I mean, if you could just imagine how many phones go into one tower in a minute, and they have to comb through all that evidence. I mean, I give kudos a little bit to, you know, having a law enforcement family. It's really, really hard, and you have to sit down and go through everything. And then the ring cameras, we haven't hit the 30-day mark, you know, it does the loop over. And, you know, all I can say is that they really need to go backtrack to every single relative, every single friend, every single landscaper. In the Elizabeth Smart case, they thought it was one person and then found out later it was another person that came to the house. And nobody had thought about this person doing a small little maintenance project. And that person is the one that had Elizabeth Smart.
Yeah, it was a maintenance worker there, you know, someone that the Smarts brought into their world because they were nice people. They were generous people. They were good people. They still are good people, obviously. Let me ask you this, Steve, before we run out of time. What's your take on the level of sophistication of the operation here? We're 17 days in. We've seen some video. What do you think?
Well, I am impressed they were able to recover that video with the help of Google. And, you know, I'm sure it's causing a bit of a privacy problem for Google, but I think there's more of it there too. And I think, you know, that the FBI does have the cell tower analysis team there on the ground. And I think that they're looking at not just, I doubt that person had their cell phone with them when this happened, but they could have been in the week or two before canvassing the area, and they see that a phone that's not anchored to that neighborhood start showing up at 1, 2, 3 in the morning. Stuff like that's going to get people on their radar. I think they're getting close. I really do. I think the next couple days.
All right, Steve Fisher, thank you so much. Robin Martinelli, great to see you again. Thank you. Coming up next, does the family actually still have hope?
We will not rest. Your children will not rest.
This is the story of the Richins. Eric, a father of 3, met an untimely end, and Corey, his widow, wrote a children's book on grief.
She's also charged now with his murder. He was faced with betrayal and terror.
I know her innocence.
Is their story a tragic romance?
Or a twisted tale of grief?
The truth will come out.
The Grief Author Murder Trial. Live coverage begins Monday morning, 8, 7 Central on Court TV.
Mommy, if you are hearing this, you are a strong woman. You are God's precious daughter, Nancy. We believe and know that even in this valley, He is with you.
It's been very difficult to watch this family suffer, waiting for their mother, begging for their mother, praying for their mother, asking for their mother, and nothing has happened, and it's been 17 days. I want to take a look at a progression of the messages that the family has sent out, and some of them obviously intended for whoever abducted their mom.
On behalf of our family, we want to thank all of you for the prayers for our beloved mom, Nancy. We feel them, and we continue to believe that she feels them too.
She holds fast to joy in all of life's circumstances. She chooses joy day after day, despite having already passed through great trials of pain and grief.
Whoever is out there holding our mother, we want to hear from you. We haven't heard anything directly. We need you to reach out, and we need a way to communicate with you so we can move forward.
We believe our mom is still out there. We need your help. I wanted to come on, and it's been 2 weeks since our mom was taken, and I just wanted to come on and say that we still have hope, and we still believe. And I wanted to say to whoever has her or knows where she is that it's never too late. And you're not lost or alone. And it is never too late to do the right thing. And we are here. We believe. And we believe in the essential goodness of every human being. And it's never too late.
And that brings us to the final question in our investigation this hour. Does the family actually still have hope? Joining me, clinical and forensic psychologist, author, and host of the podcast Intentionally Disturbing with Dr. Leslie Dobson. Dr. Leslie Dobson is with us, and author and nationally certified mental health clinician who specializes in trauma, child abuse, and neglect, Sharonda Brown. Dr. Leslie Dobson, your thoughts first. Do you think the family, where do you think they are? Do they still actually have that hope?
You know, my assumption is they have hope that they'll find the perpetrator, but not that there's still hope of life because of the length of time of how long this has gone on and her medical conditions. But that's where we come with this term ambiguous loss, is we can't move forward. The family is likely in complete and total shock because we have no closure. We don't know what's happened. They can't move anywhere. So I'm sure they have hope, but I'm sure it doesn't make any sense in their minds or their emotions right now.
Sharonda Brown, a lot of trauma in all of this. This family has been through it.
Yes, absolutely. And I do believe that they have hope. And there are a lot of factors that will be contingent upon that hope. When you think about the statistics of the number of people who are kidnapped by people they're familiar with, and just the number of family members who are sometimes involved, I think it gives hope to say someone knows something. I think it's also important to note that based on certain things that have been, explored in regards to Savannah's book, where she talks about the traditions of kidnapping for play in the family, maybe there's hope there that someone knows something and that this is just all a joke and mom will be returned. I think that there's hope in understanding that sometimes no news is good news for people, because if there is no closure, then they can hold on to the idea that something is still going to come up and that she's safe and that she's okay. Hope is what keeps people sane right now and prevents them from going into that mental space of trauma. If there's nothing you can do about it right now, then you try to stay in the moment. And I think that gives the family hope of staying in the moment, that someone knows something. We haven't been privy to any type of ransom notes, but it sounds like there's something there that they're wanting. And that gives the family hope as well, to say, we can provide this if you just bring her home.
Dr. Leslie Dobson, if Nancy is or was conscious during any parts of this, or is still aware right now of what is going on, how do you think at age 84, having lived the life that she has lived, is dealing with this?
I would assume she's dealing with it very well. She sounds very, very strong and outspoken and like a lovely woman. I would be thinking she's trying to find a way out and a way to make this work. And we have to remember that the top two reasons people kidnap elderly people is personal vengeance or money. And so, everybody's thinking, if she's alive, she's thinking about how to get through. And her family should be thinking and looking up the scientific research of all the people who have kidnapped elderly women and why, and the psychology behind it. We should be looking at the case of Dana Sue Gray, who took many elderly women, and she was a nurse, and there was a lot of reason why she did it. A lot of it was vengeance.
We have about 15 seconds left here, Sharonda Brown. Give me your final thoughts on Nancy.
I think it's important to know that she loves her children. And it sounds like from the reports and things that I've read about her and seen of her, she's a strong woman and she will fight to get through this. And I hope that gives the family hope. And I hope that it gives them the peace of mind that they need to know that she truly may be okay.
All right. Sharonda Brown, Dr. Leslie Dobson, great to have you both. We appreciate it so much. There are a lot of unanswered questions the public has been debating, but we always have to remember investigators know more than they have revealed. That's why I feel like we're getting extremely close to at least a partial answer in all of this. So when it happens, it will happen, and let's just hope and pray that Nancy comes home. I'm Vinnie Politan. We'll keep digging for answers as the investigation continues.